A few years ago, I was invited to be the chaplain of our RCMP. And one of my first meetings with the detachment commander there, he's like, "We'd love for you to be the chaplain, but I don't think you should go out at night with our police." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You're going to see the dark side of our community. You're going to see the broken homes. You're going to see the fighting. You're going to hear yelling. You're going to see reasonable people not act reasonable." And he says, "That might make you love this place less." And I said, "No, I think it'll make me love this place more. If you walk in that posture, you can get close to, I think, the kingdom of God in ways that I don't think you can do from a distance."
Well, Preston, I'm so grateful for your time today. Thanks for saying yes to joining us on the podcast.
I deeply appreciate you. Thank you for this.
I'd love to just start by set the stage. You're in a special place in a beautiful part of Canada, one part church, one part camp, one part maybe home. Just give us a window into your world.
Yeah, this is Chestermere, Alberta. It's on the east side of Calgary. It's a very fast-growing community. It's a lake surrounded by suburbs. The lake shore is about the same or same area as the north shore of the Sea of Galilee. So I like to think that I walk the same amount of space that Jesus would have spent his few years ministering in. So it is the least churched place in Alberta. So there are very few faith communities here. And so we're excited about what kind of God's invited us into. And we're asking just really big questions about what Jesus is doing here. So I'm a pastor of a church of about just shy of 200 people. And we are seeking to love our neighbors and love Jesus deeply here.
Mm. What brought you to Chestermere, Alberta?
Well, I have been, since I was a boy, part of this side of the city. So our family helped plant a church in Strathmore, which is on this side of the city. When I first came out of, I was a pastor for a few years, and we helped plant a church in another town nearby. And then I was invited to come and help plant a church here. So I've been on the east side for the better part of my 20 years of being a pastor, and it's been a joy. These are my people. I'm close to them. I know what they go through, what they celebrate, what they're hopeful for, and yeah, it's fun that Jesus would bring me back to the place similar to or close to where I grew up.
Mm. Was ministry, like life in ministry, part of your family story? You was your mom or dad in ministry or anything like that?
No, well, I mean, we were always part of church. We, when I was a boy, we were part of a new church plant, and there was a handful of us meeting in a gymnasium. And I remember we moved to town. I was looking around, thinking, in a gymnasium, there was nothing very cool about it, but something happened there, and all my
Mm,
friends came to faith. My teachers came to faith. Things blossomed there, and I remember
mm,
thinking, "Man, this is what I want to do. If I spend my life on something, it would be planting churches so that people could have this amazing community experience." And so I have that deep in my bones, this idea that a few people can meet in a gymnasium and start to deeply love each other and grow in faith, and then that spreads and grows, and other people get to join in and be part of what God's doing too. And so when I was invited to come and be a part of what is happening here, I've been here for about 11 or 12 years now. I was thrilled. I was like, good, I get to do what I feel I got invited into here. So yeah, it's been very enriching, and I'm super thankful for my faith community. They are like an absolute family to me. So.
mm. Tell me more about that season of your life. Sounds like in your teenage years where you were experiencing friends coming to know Jesus,
Mm,
teachers. Like that's really special. I'd love just to double click into that a
yeah.
bit more and hear about what was happening around you and also how you were making sense of that.
You know, I had this childhood pastor, Rob Peterson is his name, and I watched him, and I watched the way that he moved so tenderly. He was wise, he was thoughtful. While the church grew and there was action, and it felt like everything around him was bubbling and churning, and there was excitement. And I'm sure behind the scenes there was even more than my teenage eyes saw. But I saw his faithfulness. I knew that he walked through the neighborhood. I knew that he was a man of prayer. He seemed like nothing could really shake him. uh, and yet he was really honest about what he was learning too. And I watched, I watched. He probably doesn't know the extent to which I watched. And it's his faithfulness as a pastor that really put into me and said, hey, I'd like to be that kind of pastor. So I tried it out in my high school. There I am, grade 11, 12. That's a long time ago now. But I started a little Bible study and I thought, hey, maybe I can have this posture with my friends too. Maybe I can find people. And so we had this, like, what teenager gets up at 7 in the morning and runs a Bible study? And just out of my sheer naivete, I was just like, I'm going to start a Bible study. And we did. And
Why
all my
not?
friends came and kids came to faith. My teachers came to faith. And watching that, I was like, oh, Jesus went from being somebody who was intimate to me alone to being the one who shapes community and love relationships between people, and that you could do that in a tender-hearted way, which is close to
Mm,
my character, made me feel like I could be a part of this and shape something now. So here I am, a pastor, and hoping to continue walking in that tender-hearted pathway.
I love hearing about Rob. I think a lot about, I had a Rob, I had a Derwin. It was Derwin Gray was my pastor. And I sometimes I think we underestimate the degree to which our pastoral imagination, like what we imagine it means to be a pastor, is shaped by a few men and women that, entered our story at different places. And like sometimes I'm maybe concerned about the idea that's like if we get our pastoral imagination primarily shaped by social media clips of preachers, not that those preachers aren't wonderful preachers. It's like that window into what does a pastor do in a community? And you describe this person who prayed and had a strength, but a tenderness. I love that. And what a gift to have that example.
Yeah, I one day I said to him, again, might have been grade 11 or 12. I said, Rob, can I spend the day with you and do whatever it is you do? And he was very gracious and he said, sure. And we hadn't been meeting for maybe half an hour. And this is a challenging story, but it was very formative for me. He suddenly got a call, and it was from the town pedophile. And he was under house arrest. And we went over and visited him because he wanted to have a pastoral visit. And it was hard and it was confusing. And Rob was, it was a short meeting. He just listened. I went along. It was strange and there was a lot to unpack. But on the way back, we sat in the car. And the first thing Rob said to me was, this man can never come into our church community. It's illegal for him to do that. But how does Jesus rescue him? How does Jesus love him? And how do we as a church, how are we loving towards him? And I remember that moment of just this unseen meeting followed by grace. I sat there as a young man, not sure what to even do with this whole last half hour of my life, and going, oh, that's what a pastor does. He goes into these messy situations, gets close enough to something so confusing and difficult and complex, and just asks a big question. What does Jesus mean for this person? And boy, that shaped me early on as I walked away and said, oh, so that's what I feel like I'm called to do for the rest of my life is walk into these situations without much of a battle plan except to just say, where is Jesus here? And oh man, that was profound. That was very profound.
Wow. What a special invitation
Hmm.
in.
Hmm.
And I get the complexity of that. I imagine even grade 11, 12, it's like,
Yeah.
but that is a lot of the pastoral vocation and the kingdom of God. I'm often so puzzled. And I
Hmm.
think the moment I go, how do I solve this? I get in the wrong posture. But that I love. How did you phrase the question? Like, what's God up to here? How did you phrase it? I loved how you worded that.
Yeah, yeah. It was something along the lines of what does Jesus or the church mean for this person and this situation? Like just the sense that Jesus could enter into even this person's story. I thought, man, there's a lot that I have to learn about Jesus's presence because at that moment I had no imagination for how Jesus could step into anything I just experienced there, right? It was just so weird. It was hard. It was disturbing. And to know that Jesus can enter into the disturbing situations is very profound. And that gave me a fresh imagination for what I watched my pastor do. And I watched even more closely because I knew that it was with that heart that he was regularly caring for everybody, including me. He invited me to preach my first sermon there. It was a it was the most awful 3 minute
How old were you
sermon.
when you did your
Oh
first three
man,
minute?
I was maybe 18. I thought I had a 20-minute sermon. I quoted things out of context. It was awful. And I looking back, I'm like, Rob, what were you doing letting me even up there? But what a gracious posture to just say, "Hey, I'm going to let this young man give a try, knowing full well I was gonna. Oh man, it is even embarrassing thinking about it now, after 20 years.
I
But
started
what
preaching
a
way
what a
too
gracious
young.
man.
I have
Uh,
there's people that run into me and will be like, I remember when you preached on this. And I'm literally hearing them reflect back to me something that's like out of context. I definitely thank God I don't believe now. And I'm like, oh
uh,
no. But people
uh,
like were kind to give me a
yeah.
swing at something. And they saw something, I think, in me that I didn't know how to make sense of yet. Um, when did it become clear to you, I think I'm meant to do this ministry thing, this pastoral vocation, as part of your full work life? Like there's that. Was that something that you were imagining at that young age, or was taking form? Like when did you kind of pass that threshold of like I'm going to organize my life towards moving in this
Mhm.
direction?
Yeah, I was again those formative years in high school watching my pastor and really having a sense that I wanted to find a gymnasium. I wanted to gather some people. I wanted to meet in a living room. That I thought was just I wanted to be close to some people and walk with them towards Jesus. I had no aspirations of anything grand. It was give me a small place, give me some people, and hopefully by God's grace, I can serve tenderheartedly, so soft-heartedly, over a long time. Those are my two ambitions, and to this day, I still share that with our leadership team. I want to keep a soft heart, and I want to be at this, and I want long longevity in it to do this with you all. And so far, Jesus has been so kind in continuing to shape me in that way.
You've mentioned a couple times this language of tender-hearted, soft-hearted.
Mhm.
Can you tell me more about what you mean by that? Like,
Mm.
because that's something that I feel like in this world and in ministry, a lot of the forces are working towards not a soft heart, not a tender heart.
Mhm.
And so I'd love to know a bit more about what you mean by that, because it seems really precious to you, and
Mm.
a bit about the journey of trying to cultivate or maintain that.
Mm. Yeah, I think cultivation's a pretty good word for it. I thought along the way, I mean, I would see pastors and they would be quite ambitious. They were uh, quite excited about creating something grand. Maybe there's a quote by Abraham Heschel that says, "It is not his destiny to accomplish, but to contribute." And and I wasn't so interested in accomplishing. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to be a part of something. I just didn't want to make something and hand it over. And so I knew along the way, or I learned along the way, that my heart, which I aim for it to be soft, can be a part of that. I sometimes deal with anxiety. And I've only learned as I've gotten older that this feeling that I sometimes carry is anxiety. It's this rush of uh, adrenaline and things inside of me, and I'd maybe be afraid at different times to step into the world because my body would say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is something you should maybe be afraid of." But I've learned what my anxiety is, and I've learned that me as I am, with my heart as it is welcome here. I spent some time this last summer at a Trappist monastery in Metkin Abbey in South Carolina, and it was just tender. And after spending time with these monks in silence, I remember they prayed for me after, and one of the monks said, "Thank you, God, for His person and presence." They were grateful for me being there, not what I could accomplish, but who I am. And this has begun slowly allowing me to have the just giving me permission to have that tender heart. So probably scripture that I hold to the most, the one that awakened me some years ago was when Jesus in the resurrection. We're a few days after Easter, so we can celebrate this story. But Jesus in the resurrection, he's there, and Mary mistakes him for a gardener. And I'm blown away by this. I love that. I love that Jesus in the resurrection, he could, we picture him bursting forth from the tomb, but what he's doing is he's doing what gardeners have always done. I love it. Like I just picture him. If he's mistaken for a gardener, he's probably gardening. And what do gardeners do? They get down on their knees. They go, what is happening here? Because that's what I do when I walk in my garden. I go, oh, look at the weeds or look at this problem or whatever. And I just imagine the first thing the risen Lord does is get down on his hands and knees and he's rifling through some weeds or some growing debris or something. And I love his tenderheartedness that as I guess he's waiting for Mary or something, his heart is to just tend to something small and beautiful right outside of the tomb. And I think that's what God's been doing all the way along from creation all the way now. He's getting on his hands and knees and he's tending to something. And that's the tenderheartedness that I think Jesus is always inviting me to, is to get on my hands and knees and tend gently, consistently, that long obedience in the same direction. That is really where I'm finding the most peace.
I feel like this image of gardener that we see shaping our understanding of God also shapes our understanding of the pastoral vocation,
Mhm.
what we're doing. And I often think about the living community that is the church that I lead. And, you kind of never know. It's this like alive organism of interconnected relationships and it touches the rest of the city and the parish you're part of. But I'm like, the only way I can think about this is like an ecosystem. Like I contribute to it, I participate in it, but you can't control it. Like it's a living thing. I would love to hear you just reflect on how do you understand your role as a pastor, as a gardener?
Oh, well, my wife and I garden. She's been quite ill the last few years, so our garden maybe needs a little bit of work coming into spring. But I've been a beekeeper, so we have bees in our yard. We have this garden. It's this postage stamp, a suburban space. But we have nurtured this garden. We have a rock garden, a edible garden. We have an English hobbit garden. We built a hobbit hole for the kids. Like we have this like bustling little garden, and we built this quite early on, moving to Chestermere. We had moved into a new neighborhood, suburban sprawl. There was nothing. We stood on our front porch. There was nothing green at all, and we cried. We did. We said, "What did we do here? Why are we living here? This is awful." Especially coming from places like Vancouver, where it's so green. And then we decided we would plant a garden. That was a very early move for us. We took out a little loan and we started to garden. We amended soil. It took time.
Hmm.
We planted trees. Those things grow slowly here. We just took time. But as a gardener, this is the only way to understand a garden is to get close to it. You have to get your hands into the soil of it all, yeah, into the humus. And there's this sense that you got to be close enough to see, smell, hear. Is there life? Are things buzzing? Are there insects? My girls were out there just a few days ago. They're like, Dad, there's so many ladybugs. And that's good because they're going to eat the aphids on our apple tree. Like this is all, they are even paying attention to what's growing here. And uh, and as we spend time with this garden over years, we know what to expect. We know where the crocuses are going to come up. We know where these other plants are about to emerge. And if they don't, we know that that should be there and something's gone awry. And so there's this really seasonal rhythm with it. We even block out times in our calendar when we got to put seeds in here. We're going to be fixing our sprinkler system here. And there's just lots of things to pay attention to in this kind of seasonal rhythm of it all. And it feels very close to our hearts as a pastor, because what is church but a really long seasonal rhythm of growth and change? And you really have to be tender and patient with it.
I've been thinking a lot about, individual discipleship journeys.
Mm,
As a pastor, you've got the this living organism that is all these relationships. And then you've got these individual hearts and households and families.
mm,
And, I think our hope is that somehow our preaching, our praying, our worship services, our programs, the things we do is somehow helping people move. Over the years, what have you learned about the individual journey? Like it's all over the place. It itself is its own garden. Um, how do we make sense as a pastor of our part to play in this really living journey that the Lord is ultimately orchestrating and this individual is part of it, but then we get the honor of stepping in. Like it's such an incredible thing we get to do as pastors is participate in people's journeys with God. How have you made sense of it? Because I love your spirituality and I love the lens by which you see um, the world. I just love to hear you reflect on it on that personal level as you help people take steps in their walk with God.
Yeah, I'll I'll say this. Gardeners by their very nature are always going to be amateurs. They're always going to be curious. They're always going to be
Mm,
learning. They're always going to be interested and thankful and responsive. Like the, I don't, I have professional gardening friends, and they are the most always learning people I have ever met because everything is new in a garden. The way that this plant works with this other plant, the way that this new arrangement is, they're fascinated by it all. And
mm,
they lean in and lean over and get down into it. And I think the second that a gardener says, no, 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 we only plant it this way, plants work in this way, I got it all figured out. I don't think you're really a gardener anymore. But the same thing's true of a pastor. I think the second that I stop being an amateur pastor, and by amateur, I just mean
mm,
somebody who's in the action with it, who is interested in what God's doing. The Spirit's going to do something new between these people. That when there's somebody brand new to faith comes into my community and they're excited and on just jazzed about this new faith community and this new faith in Jesus that they're excited to find, and then somebody who's a teenager grew up in our youth group connects with that person and these two become friends or something, and suddenly you go, what is transpiring here? How did these two become friends? What is new and flourishing here? And so I'm often adjusting as a pastor, or just frankly curious and asking, wow, what's about to happen here? I know that we love to have a discipleship pathway. Like this is something we talk about. What's a discipleship pathway for people who come into my church? How can they grow in their faith? And after all these years, I have no idea. Like I'm like, there's a discipleship direction, but I I have no idea how these people are going to engage with each other. I have no idea what is going to grow. In fact, they're going to surprise me as they
mhm,
reflect on their faith. A man in our church lost his wife. We had a funeral for her, beloved part of our church. He just sat here an hour or two ago and was just reflecting on the deep goodness that he's been experiencing and the sorrow that
mm,
he's experiencing. And I just sit and I watch and I go, what a beautiful story of God's faithfulness is emerging in him and around him and through him. And so I just got to be an amateur gardener and say, can I be here with you while you are growing? Can I participate? Can I be close, proximal to you in this? Because this is beautiful. And so I've seen a lot of people mourn and grieve, and it's always different. So I
mm,
have heaven forbid um, if I'm going to say, okay, here are the three steps to grieving, and this is how we're going to get through it. It's just I don't think that it works quite like that.
mm. I love when you say like I have no idea because I think I'm where I'm at right now is I am more convinced than ever that God is like I've seen some of the miracles I feel like I'm witnessing as a pastor is like people doing Sermon on the Mount stuff, like reconciling or forgiving or like real discipleship steps, but I can't predict where and when it's happening. Like I'm just so aware that somehow I'm part of it or the things we're doing, but the Spirit's alive. And it's like I appreciate your kind of chuckle at the discipleship pathway. We all have it. We should build them. They're important.
Sure.
But no
Yes.
one, it's
Yes.
like
Yes. Yes.
where people on board and off board and how life circumstances, it's this beautiful mystery. But he's doing it. Like the Lord is shaping people and what we do is part of it. It matters. Um, but I'm like you, man, I have no idea.
Well, like people come into my garden and they go, "Oh, this is beautiful." They don't need to know how it grows, what's gone into it. You can just sense when there's something alive there. And right now, and this doesn't happen lots in the life of a pastor. At least this has been mine. I've been at this a while, and I love my church, but we're in this little beautiful window where everybody's like, this is growing nicely. Like there's peace and there's fruit of the spirit. We're watching these things, and I'm telling people, enjoy it. Like enjoy this moment because we don't know how this happened. Like we just like our inputs are ourselves, our prayer, our tenderness with each other, our faithfulness, more mourning together. Like these are the things that are nurturing the soil underneath us. And we're just trusting that something good is
Mm,
beginning to emerge here. And um, I was reading to today, and I found this quote from Abraham Heschel, who I've just been loving recently. I know a lot of people read his book on Sabbath, but he has this other book called "I Asked for Wonder," and I just read this morning, and I thought it was good. He says originally the holy kadosh meant that which is set apart, isolated, and segregated. And we've talked about that. Holiness is set apart, right? But he says this in Jewish piety, it assumed a new meaning, denoting a quality that is involved, immersed in common and earthly endeavors. I love that.
mm,
Holiness as something that's an earthly endeavor, like holiness as nurturing a community of people into seeing each other and walking with each other and being involved and immersed in each other's lives. But like you just can't program that. That's something that's nurtured over time as a quality of the spirit inside of each person. And when that's nurtured and found, then you suddenly go, something's alive here. How did we get here? We don't know, but we planted something and and now it smells really good around here. And that's nice.
yeah. Oh, and I wonder if part of our role as pastors is to bless when we see things growing, like to speak, like when we see God alive in someone or
Ah,
signs of beauty or those little buds of life to go to bless that with our words over
yeah,
people and in our hearts to celebrate where we see signs of the kingdom and steps in discipleship and bless it and then nurture it where we can. Like I
yeah.
think about, I mean, gardeners, they put up little sticks to kind of create a little bit of direction. It's growing. As I see it growing,
Yeah,
okay, I'm
yeah,
going to add
yeah.
some, and that work of like blessing and putting some maybe scaffolding in place,
Well,
but to just pay attention.
I think we actually need a dictionary of new language for how we talk about growth in life. Like, um, we don't have language for how we love our neighbors within the church. We
Mm,
have books on theology as far as the as full of libraries full of books on theology, study of God, study of neighbor. uh, I call it Placianology. I made it up. Placian's the word for neighbor and the study of neighbor. And we no one's written books on this stuff, but the same thing's true for our churches. So do we have language when we see something alive and holy and fresh? Do we have good metaphors for that when we spot and say something's happening there, and I want to get close enough to notice it? And I just don't think we've gotten close enough to our faith communities, to our neighbors, to our world around us, because as pastors, we've gotten caught up in in some other activities uh, that sometimes pull us away from that which is ordinary and earthy around us. And I think we need to step back in and develop some of that language. When I'm talking to people and they're growing in their faith, um, there was a guy I was talking to, and he's trying to explain what God's doing in his heart. He had zero language for it, like just none. He just like had some feelings. And I said, "Describe to me your truck." And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's a Hemi this, it's a, V6 this, it's a this and that. And he told me all about, and I said, "You have all this language for your truck, but for your own soul, there's work to be
mm.
done to find language for it." And so I think finding metaphors of gardens and so on are helpful for us, even as pastors, to say, I see something, what is growing there? How do we talk about it so we can celebrate it? I think you're exactly right.
Um, one of you're a writer as well as a pastor, and one of the books that you wrote in 2017 is about bees and this image and this metaphor that intersects with some of the themes of neighboring that you described. Can you just take us into that piece that you've written? And I know that's part of your own practice to keep bees. My father-in-law kept bees for years. I know that there's good years and there's bad years, and it's a lot of work and it's a sweet reward, but it's not without a ton of cultivating intentionality. I just love to hear, I guess, really what God taught you through keeping bees and how that became vocabulary to make sense of neighboring and other parts of your life with God.
Yeah, I'd finished my studies, my doctorate, and my brain was pretty fried, and I was actually taken under the care of of an elderly man in our neighborhood here who was a beekeeper, and he took me out. He had a bad back, and so he invited me to come and lift these heavy bee boxes, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I was fast, and I was moving things. I was nervous, I was fearful, and he stopped and kind of in a Yoda voice, he said, "You must slow down, or the bees will teach
Mm,
you to slow down." And it was my first entry into this world of beekeeping that uh, I move at this particular scale of space and time, and bees work at a whole different one. They work at a whole different pace and rhythm, and it taught me something important. And that first little entry invitation taught me. I started to go down the language of pollinators, and I was interested in how pollination happens in my neighborhood, and I didn't know anything about this. And I realized that these little insects were these keystone species. They were vital to the whole well-being of my neighborhood, and we didn't even think about them. So I started to talk to kids in school about this, and I still talk to kids in school, and we talk about the smallest parts of our community. Pollinators have the biggest effect. And it's so important for
mm.
people to see that their role in the regular rhythm of connecting in this place plays a role in creating growth in life. In fact, it's essential for it. We neighbors can be a keystone species. We can be a vital part of what the fabric of our place is. And so getting involved in something small is the thing that we want to celebrate the most. And so I wanted to write a book. I was invited to write about just this metaphor of bees. And then I was really paying attention to my place, my neighbors, what God was doing there. And it was just kind of a passion project. We're trying to reflect midstream on what I was experiencing as a pastor in a place, doing really small, tender work. And it's become a kind of heart rhythm for, I think, our community and for many others now.
What advice would you give to a pastor that wants to help cultivate in their congregation eyes to see their neighbors and practices to engage meaningfully with neighbors?
Hmm. Yeah, we as a church have the church in the West, I think, has rendered love of neighbor down to a barbecue, a service project, and we believe it's the just the purview of the church proper. And we actually, in our local church here, we actually don't have a neighbor loving program. I think some people are surprised by that. We just don't have a special group that does neighborhood things. We've tried to make it part of the way that we talk about our faith as that you know and love your neighbors, and uh, and that's been a simple rhythm. We've tried to deprogrammatize it as much as possible and just make it part of who we are. And so that Oh man, this is the hard part. It means you have to meet them. It means you have to love them. It means you have to know them and celebrate with them. It means you have to sit with them on their porch when they're going through divorce. It means you have to share your own life when you're going through something hard and say, "This is what I need." The biggest thing I did in my neighborhood was begin to ask for things. If I need a cup of sugar, I ask for it. I sometimes I'm nervous too. Sometimes I'm too self-sufficient to do that. Sometimes I'm wearing my pajamas and I don't want to do it. And then I think, oh man, I this is what it's about. And so it's not putting myself
Mm.
together before engaging. It's stepping in. So um it's but it's a lot of mourning too. We've had neighbors move away, and that hurt. That hurts. I miss some of my favorite neighbors, and they are gone. And I go, boy, can we ever have a neighborhood as good as we had now that they are gone? So it's giving your heart over. The word compassion just means to suffer with. And I think to be a compassionate person, or care is another word that is connected deeply with this language of suffering. So when you go and you hurt with somebody, or open your lives up enough to suffer with, that's I think where the heart of neighboring eventually comes from. When I garden, it's sweaty. I get stung by a bee. I get pokies in my fingers. My fingernails are full of dirt. Like everything about nurturing a garden as a pastor is exactly what you're doing in a neighborhood. You're getting so involved that you go, oh yeah, I think I borrowed their air compressor and it's still in my garage. I better get that back before they need it or something. So I think Jesus knew what he was talking about when he said, "Love your neighbors." I think he knew the complexity of it all. He knew that they'd speak other languages. He knew that they'd be abrasive. He knew that they'd be strange or something. Like he knew that it was in the work of that we would come to work out our faith. And I tell you, I've learned more about myself. I've had to confess my own weakness and fear and anxiety by being a neighbor. One of my neighbors, he had big Harley bicycles and had scary people visiting his garage. I remember this very early on. I was like, "Hun, I'm going to go over and visit that neighbor. If I don't come back in an hour, call the police or something." I did it right now. Him and I are fantastic friends, and it's great. But we have to have compassion. We have to care, and that means stepping in.
Mm. Chestermere,
Mhm.
22,000 people.
It's closer to 30 now. It's growing,
It's
growing
growing,
fast.
30,000
Yeah,
people. So it's not a tiny
yeah,
town. It's a smaller
yeah.
town. And
Sure.
it's close to Calgary, right? Like you're not
Yes,
too,
it
how
is.
far are you from Calgary?
Oh, about 10 minutes max. Yeah.
So you're kind of in a unique spot where you're in this urban sprawl. Like there's the urban reality, but you also are in a smaller town. I just would love to hear reflections from you about, I think so much of the pastoral conversation in the last number of years has focused to some degree on the urban context. Lots of reasons for that. Urban contexts are growing. When I think though about Canada, I also think about not just the suburban, but the rural and remote. Um, Pastors who are to some degree pretty isolated, um, who are in smaller towns, and you're just in a unique vantage point where you're proximate to kind of both realities to some degree. I wonder any reflections you have for pastors who are in more remote contexts or in smaller cities and making sense of their vocation in that particular context.
Yeah, I mean, what I think inspires me is the fact that Jesus spent his ministry in a place about the size of mine, along a shore, Capernaum, Chorazin, and Bethsaida. These were all people are wondering if it's around from 30 to 70,000 people live. Now it's pastoral lands, and there's not. I've been there several times, and it's really nice to stand over this pastoral place. But it was actually a bit of a bustling hub. There was hundreds of fishing boats and an industry around that. So it was kind of a mix, just as you say, it was not quite big enough to be an urban center, but it wasn't too small to be just some farms. And Jesus got in the mix of it all, and he spoke at the different synagogues and was involved in the life of it, and involved long enough that people would know him, people would critique him, people would have questions for him, people would rush to him, and uh, a few years ago, I was invited to be the chaplain of our RCMP. We have a detachment here. And I was invited in, and one of my first meetings with the detachment commander there, he's like, "We'd love for you to be the chaplain, but I don't think you should go out at night with our police." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You're going to see the dark side of our community. You're going to see the broken homes. You're going to see the fighting. You're going to hear yelling. You're going to see reasonable people not act reasonable." And he says, "That might make you love this place less." And I said, "No, I think it'll make me love this place more." And it's true. I go out late at night with our RCMP. I travel. I get to be in people's homes, see their world. It's broken. It's hard. People might have nice cars parked out front, but behind the scenes, families are falling apart. And that's the proximal space that we're called to be in. And I think any pastor who's in a small town has behind the doors of every neighborhood house a story of pain and a story that you can step into and be close to. And if you walk in that posture, you can get close to, I think, the kingdom of God in ways that I don't think you can do from a distance. Uh, and there's a lot of hurting people need to just sit and talk and have somebody present with them. And it's just my person and presence that I bring to most situations. It isn't my education. It's all that education has just been for me to learn just simply that my person and presence, Jesus sitting on the seat of my heart allows me to be close to the deepest wounds of my community. And I don't have to know any answers. I can just be close to it. And something very special happens there.
Mm. Preston, you're a special person. It's an absolute delight to hear you talk about pastoring. I I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for the way you talk about your community, your people, the place you live. I loved when you corrected me. It's not 22, it's 30,000 because you know and you care. I love that.
Oh,
I just I really honor you, brother. And
mm.
I know um, you're teaching me in this conversation about two things that are deeply connected: what it means to be a pastor and the heart of God. And so thank you so much for sharing a bit of your story with us, just a little bit of it, and giving us a window into your spirituality and your heart. It's been a great gift to me, and I'm sure to everyone listening as well.
I know many pastors listening are carrying a lot, and I, I just want to say that that the work you are doing is tender and beautiful, and you matter in this, and it's okay to be known, and it's okay to receive love from those around you. And I think sometimes we guard ourselves from that. I need to be loved by my community, not as a people pleasing thing, but I need to be embraced, and I need to embrace. And so I just hope that anyone listening is able to draw a little bit closer to their faith community, and find that sense of peace too. So bless you. Thank you.